Hello, welcome to or welcome back to How to Change the World, the podcast that equips changemakers with the insights, tools, and inspiration to drive meaningful change. I am Catherine Alonzo, and today I am joined by an incredible changemaker and dear friend, Heather Hiscox. Heather is a frustrated changemaker on a mission to change the way we change the world. So I knew she was an absolutely perfect guest for How to Change the World. She is the founder and CEO of Pause for Change and the author of No More Status Quo, a proven framework to change the way we change the world. She is also the co-creator and host of Possibility Project, which is an online conversation series and growing community of disruptive changemakers reclaiming their power through meaningful sparks, connection, and action. I was able to join the Possibility Project as a guest a few months ago, and it was my honor to do so. And I 100% recommend that you check out the Possibility Project. Heather and I talk about changing the world, our pull and our drive to do it, and how we can do it better. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with Heather Hiscox. Heather Hiscox, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. I am so incredibly grateful for this conversation because I told you before we started recording, but I always feel so uplifted after we've spoken. I'm just so grateful for the work that you do and how you do that work, how you show up in the world. So I'm really happy for our listeners that they get to hear you, but also happy for me that I get to spend this time with you today. So thank you. And sort of speaking of which, speaking of your work, tell me a little bit about what it is that you do.
I like to describe it as the umbrella that the things that I do fit under. I really think about it. I'm a frustrated change maker. So everything that I do fits under that. So I have my pause framework, and that's the work that I do primarily with nonprofits and local governments, a little bit with philanthropy. And then I have Possibility Project, a disruptive conversation series about how we can be better in the sector. And then the third part is the book. And the book is based on the pause framework, but the book is really No More Status Quo is the name of it, is intended to help any change maker in any area of uncertainty really feel less alone and more connected to ways that they can change the way that they change the world. That's really what drives me. And so the work that I do is helping organizations address uncertainty so they can bring in a challenge, something that's not quite working or they're not meeting those goals, whatever metrics they might have designed for it. There's some areas of frustration or gaps, or organizations sometimes will have an opportunity. Something like, what if we could do better? What if there's more? How do we just show up differently? It can be really positive and kind of an open space as well. So I kind of group those together as they all have a challenge at the root. And then I help them learn a different problem solving strategy, and they get to learn these new skills to apply to that area of uncertainty. So that's what I get to do.
And how did you get here? What was the journey to this point?
Oh, the frustrated changemaker sort of moniker that I've given myself it's so true. So my work was born out of my own frustration of working in the sector and saying, why are we designing these programs or policies, processes without ever talking to the people most impacted? Why are we just pandering to donors and really just getting thrown so off course by our boards? And why are we being pulled in multiple different directions with our grants and those foundations that we're also acquiescing to? I just saw such strange behavior in the sector and saw the weak impact that we were creating because of our status quo problem solving skills and because of those established power dynamics and the demography of the sector. There's a lot of problematic areas. I really had to take a step back and look around and say, what else is out there? We are not doing the right things to really have just futures. What else are other people doing? So I started this exploratory journey and really got involved in lean startup and was inspired by design thinking, human-centered design, lean experimentation. But that wasn't created for humans or for challenges that we all face. So a lot of adaptation for that. And then how I think about my work is it's just sort of a mishmash of a lot of different methods and ideas And it's sort of coded in love and care. So it's putting all those pieces together, but really coming at this work with our humanity, with our a focus on empathy, a focus on respect, or focus on care, and really helping organizations and teams feel supported, feeling seen, feeling like they have the skills and the support to really make big changes. So yeah, that's really how I got here, was out of my own frustration and knowing we could do better, and we can.
And Heather, where does your passion for making the world a better place come from?
Gosh, I don't know. I think I was born with it. I think it's like genetically encoded. My mom was always kind of a troublemaker, and I see myself in that as well. Kind of questioning and challenging, and doing community organizing work. So I saw that in practice. But it was great. My dad was the military, Mr. Practical. How are you actually going to get that done? So it was great to have the two of them. Of my mom was the dreamer and the what if. And my dad was like the tactical, like, okay, no, really, if you're going to do this, how? What's the plan? And so it was great, using all those sides of my brain and being challenged in that way. But honestly, I think I've always been focused on it since I was very, very young. Like some of my earliest memories are, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to be a part of that. I don't even know what that means because I don't know the words. I'm like 7, but like, I know I'm going to do something like that. And that's what I want to do. So that's really been the guiding light of my entire journey so far.
Yeah, it's like a pull or a drive that's in
Yeah,
you. Yeah,
exactly.
I feel the same way. And I think a lot of the social change makers that I interview and that I work with report the same thing, that it's this pull that maybe it's nature, maybe it's nurture, maybe it's a combo, but it's a
Mhm.
physical feeling that is this guiding light for what we do. And there's a lot of frustration. And so I love your moniker of the frustrated change maker, because I know from personal experience, and I'm sure this has been your experience too, you are not alone. There is a lot of frustration for those that are trying to make a difference in the world. And in your experience, Heather, what are the main drivers of that frustration?
I think it's around power. A lot of its power
Mm.
is looking at the sector and saying, okay, well, who are making these decisions? So, for grant making, let's say, these foundations, they're following this playbook and this blueprint that they think, oh, this is the way you give out money. Some of that money is amassed in interesting ways that go unchecked, right? So where does all this money come from? No one's really talking about that and the power that lies within that. Are people not paying taxes? Are people using tax avoidance strategies and sort of savvy capitalistic money laundering techniques, via philanthropy, I would say. So where's the money coming from? What's the power with that? Who's deciding where that money goes and how the money is dispersed? What are the ridiculous applications that they've copied and pasted from an adjacent foundation that they think this is the way? And then there's no analysis of what that does to the nonprofit organizations in their community or whatever area that they serve. Why would you require this lengthy application for $2,500, $10,000, right? Why would you restrict it to really specific programs? Why would you think that you can actually evaluate what would be impactful when you are really far removed from the actual community members that will be supported by this funding? I mean, it's just all those things make no sense when you start to tease them out. They're not efficient. They're not effective. So some of the vehicles that we're using, we're not even analyzing or hold anyone accountable because of power. So we're saying, I don't like this application process. The questions don't make any sense. I can't contact the foundation because they don't have any phone numbers and they don't want to be contacted. I can't build relationships or have empathetic connection with people at the foundation because again, I can't reach them. So I can't more deeply understand. I have to do this sort of weird analysis of 990s and looking at other organizations I might have funded to draw conclusions. And then I have to spend 30 hours on an application. And it's like a Hail Mary, hope for the best. In no way does that serve community. None of that serves community or their greater good. But because there's a power dynamic connected to money, we play the game. And so that's what I think is really at the root of a lot of this. And that's just one example of how do we really say who created the game, who designed the game, and for what purposes? Because it doesn't seem for love of community. It doesn't seem for love of the sector. It's not connected to deep respect and understanding. So that's where I'm like, I think power is the thing, that we don't talk about, but it is what is constraining us from doing our best work.
It threads through everything, really. Your book, No More Status Quo, I have it here.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it again this morning. I'm like, I just love your book cover. I just love it so much because I think it's for those that are watching on the video, you can see it. It's this idea of no more status quo graphically. And it's a great book cover. So a little story, I ended up on your email list, which I'm thrilled about. And you had emailed out when your book was published and said, I'm having a book launch, a virtual book launch. And I couldn't make the book launch, but the title really stood out at me. And as I read the synopsis, I was like, this book is for me. And so, ordered a copy right away and read it. I think I've told you this, Heather, read it on a plane in one go and just really met me where I was at the time, and somebody who has dedicated my career and my life really to driving social change. And you offer this framework, you said it, but it's really about being able to change how we make change. And I'm writing my own book now, and one of the things that you learn really quickly is that a book isn't about something, it's for somebody. And so it certainly felt like you wrote this for me, and I read it that way. And so thank you, first of all. Thank you so much. But tell me about, who did you write the book for? Who did you have in mind as you were putting words on the page?
That's such a great question. I was writing, I think, to my past self. I was sort of writing the book I wish I had at that time when I was looking around going, what are we doing? What is this? And it's really interesting. In the early part of writing the book, I had two different people read it as I went along. And so I would say, okay, can you read this part? Can you read this chunk? And it was like the beginning part of the book. And one of the people said, you seem really angry. And I said, really? Oh my, okay, interesting. And that frustration is connected to anger, of course. So I was like, okay, there's some truth in that. But it was such a helpful piece of feedback because I had to really analyze and say, okay, I'm writing it to my past self and people like me that are, in the same feeling. But I don't want to, I'm not angry with them, of course, but anger is not how I show up in my life. And we all have moments like, sparks. But I said, I really want to approach this with love. And not to the point where someone's like, what is this book that I'm reading? Am I reading some sort of like romance or love letter? No. I mean, there's some forceful, very chosen on purpose words, right? Intentional words that are angry. But I thought, you know what? I really do want it to be a love letter to those frustrated change makers that are just like me. That says, like we said, you're not alone. What you're seeing is not in your head. You're not imagining things. And this pull that you feel, this instinct that you feel that I know we can be better. I know there's got to be more. Yes, there is. And this book is here for you. And so it was a good shift for me. And it acted as a guiding light, honestly, for a lot more of my work. So when I'm trying to create a presentation or a keynote for a conference or a special event or things like that, where I'm talking about the framework, I really think about what's the feeling of warmth and care that I want to create with my content. I want to make people uncomfortable, but I also want them to feel seen and supported. So yeah, that's how the evolution really started. I think I needed to get that anger out before I could really think about my rooting principles.
Oh, I love that. And it just shows what a process writing is, especially when you're writing for your younger self or a different version of you. You have to work out some of the emotion that you experienced on the way so that you can deliver the words in a way that, sort of shedding away some of those emotions to present your ideas in a kind of a tidy package.
I had a quote, and I have it next to my desk, and it's about how when you write a book, it writes you. So I was really open to that. I was open to where the journey would take me. It was so emergent, honestly. I had a focus. I knew kind of the structure that I wanted. I knew the overall points that I wanted to make. And obviously I know my framework, and I had all my stories I wanted to pick and choose from. But I was really open to what's my learning that's part of this journey of trying to share my learning with other people. I'm still learning all the time, nonstop. So Where am I feeling tension? Where am I feeling joy? Where am I feeling some uncertainty myself? How do I really embed the book with my own self-awareness along the way? So that was very helpful because I think it really deepened the book, and it stretched some of the elements that are in the book as well.
Yeah. Does the book have a origin story? Was there a particular moment where you thought, I can't be doing with this anymore, I'm going to write all these ideas down into a book?
Yeah, I wanted to write the book earlier. I think, the universe had better plans for me. My co-founder at the time was like, I'm just not feeling it. She was not a huge fan of like marketing and outreach. And I'm not either, but I was like, no, I think it's more than like blog posts. I think there's a book here, but I didn't really want to pursue it. And honestly, I didn't know where to start. And so I followed my own framework to identify, what do I not know? What do I not understand about how a book comes to life? And then I did interviews. I interviewed people to understand, what does it mean to get a book deal? What's a hybrid publisher? What is self-publishing like? And I interviewed a whole host of people and had these great insights and excellent learning. And then I was really helpful to inform my decision about what I wanted to do. My experience is unique, and I don't want to set any expectations for people, but two friends of mine had written with the book with Page Two out of Vancouver, a woman-owned amazing publishing company, which you are now connected to and aware of.
Yeah.
Yay. And I was introduced to them. I sent one of the co-founders the first 30 pages. That's all I had. And it was just a hint above stream of consciousness. I think it made some sense, obviously. And she wrote back and said, we should do this. This is great. And I was like, okay. So within 48 hours, I had a publisher after I'd done all that pre-work. So I think I was doing like some hard manifesting. So I think that's also why some of this just sort of popped in alignment. So I had the agreement with them and then got to writing after those first 30 pages. And I wrote the rest of the book in 3 weeks. It was just living under my skin, just ready to come out. And so it just came forth. And then, of course, there's the part I don't like as much, the editing, right? God bless editors, amazing humans, right? And people don't understand the layers and types of editing they're involved in a book process, but wonderful to help me, prioritize the content, shorten it a bit. And I made some of that extra content that people can download from the website. Oh, the person that does like the commas and the periods and semicolons, amazing, brilliant humans.
Yes. It's doing service for the world.
Oh my gosh. And it's like what I'm not great at, checking all the grammar, checking all the things. So it was a great process. But what I'll also add is that while I wrote the book, I also redesigned all of my slide deck content, and I reformulated how I present the work. So when I would work with my instructional learning designer, Heather Hiscox, we would identify areas that were maybe my language was ableist, or maybe my language was unclear, or I was making a broad generalization, which might be inequitable or not a just statement. So I was able to really be reflective with some of the feedback of having an outside observer who's very experienced in equity work. And then I was able to infuse that learning not only into my content, but into the book. And so I'm really glad that I did that. It took more time, but everything was in alignment. So that made me feel like I was reaching this new level of alignment, integrity, honesty, and connection to the work. So that was helpful too.
That's wonderful. Heather, I want to ask you about the pause framework that you use in your work and also that you introduce in the book. Before I do that, we're going to take a quick ad break and then we'll jump right in.
Okay.
It is such a tough time for nonprofits, agencies, and changemakers. Funding is tight, capacity is stretched, and your work matters more than ever. And you need communication support that can keep up. That's why we are super excited to introduce our new suite of modular, flexible services, built to help you and your storytelling stay visible, resilient, and connected when it matters the most. Whether you need a quick messaging refresh or adaptable on-demand support, Javelina is here to help you move forward with clarity and strength. You can see this list of services and discounted prices at javelina.co/rapid-response-services. That's javelina.co/rapid-response-services. Okay, so explain the pause framework, if you will.
Yes. So it is an acronym. I couldn't help myself. I chose pause because that was the number one advice I was giving to all of my clients, because everyone was so reactive and always in a rush and always jumping to solutions that I just said, okay, slow down, hang on a minute. What is going on? So that was why I created it. So the P of pause is package the challenge. I found that when I worked with teams, they had many different perspectives of what the challenge was. And so, without alignment and understanding at the very foundation of the work, how are we going to do great work? So, a lot of it's about getting alignment and then identifying all the different stakeholders impacted. Who are all the different people connected to the challenge or opportunity? And we need to focus on one group at a time. This one size fits all nonsense that we do in our organizations just doesn't work. So getting people aligned and focused and ready to go. And then the A is assess uncertainty. So how do we really identify our own positionality, our own biases that will impact our ability to learn and connect empathetically? So we pause to take time to really analyze how our perspective is literally only our own. And the power is when all of our perspectives come together. We get this fullness of understanding. And then that leads to the part where I have teams identify what they don't know. And we celebrate it. And it becomes the fuel and the guidepost for our learning journey. And so we talk about what we don't know, and then we go engage with stakeholders. It can be internal, organizational colleagues, it can be community members, it can be anyone. And we start to turn those uncertainties into our questions. But I don't just jump right into empathy. I talk about the harm and the benefits of empathy, talk about consent. How do we get connected and ready to talk to people with ethical consent, with trauma-informed understanding, with prepared response for people that are in need. So teams are ready to really go out appropriately and effectively. How do they really listen and integrate new insights and learning? And then only then do we get to brainstorming solutions. Usually people go, there's a problem, solutions.
Yep.
But there's that massive gap, right, of awareness and understanding and alignment. And that's what collapses a lot of our potential solutions. So we do abundant brainstorming, which is really different in how people typically practice. And then once we identify an abundance of potential solutions, that we choose one, and then we try to break it. None of our solutions are precious. It's not all in or it all dissolves. It's like we have 30 other options just sitting there, but we're going to focus on this first. And we try to break the solution into its assumptions. What must be true for the solution to actually create value? And what is that value? What is that end goal that we're here to create? And then we test almost like behavioral experiments, behavioral hypotheses with our stakeholders to see, are people able and willing to engage in our potential solution? And then the E of pause is, how do we make evidence-informed decisions? How do we take the power back, where it's not a pet project from a random board member? It's not something that we try to copy and paste from a state 5 states over. It's not something we read in a journal that's disconnected from our own mission and work that we do. So how do we make decisions based on the qualitative and quantitative data that we collect as we co-design? That's the key word. We co-design with our stakeholders all along the way. They're not just waiting at the end for like, I don't know what to do, I'm wringing my hands. No, that's ridiculous. It's a terrible assumption to make. We're actually knowing what will work. And so most teams will start to have deep understanding within about 6 weeks. So it also challenges the idea that we need to form these task force groups and to use a year of funding or pilot funding or no, if you use different skills, you get different rapid results. So that's really what the pause framework is. It's going slow to go fast.
And when you introduce the pause framework to your clients and your community, what are some typical forms of resistance that you receive?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think I've gotten to the point where I repel the people that I don't want to work with, and I attract the people I do want to work with.
Which is great.
That's the key to entrepreneurship. One of them is to get the value proposition, get the messaging pretty tight, so that people know, like, I'm running from this because this is scary, or this is like really resonating. This is okay, I want more of this. But there's still challenges. So with that said, I would say sometimes I'm working with my teams, and I work with teams that are from all different parts of the organization. So we're breaking down those silos and hierarchies that often hold back real impact. And so they're in it, right? They're doing the interviews. they're synthesizing, they're learning, they're using these different tools. And then we still have a leader who's informed. We know we do a lot of updates and things, but they're still in reactive mode. They're still in a management mode, not mentorship mode. They're still like, well, what's the ROI? How quickly are we going to get this solution? It's like, well, we don't even know what we should pursue, right? So that's what my job also is to do, is to walk that line, really hold space for each of my teams and for that leader that are feeling discomfort in this new learning experience, and really be an advocate for the team to say, okay, you're falling back into patterns that you agreed you would interrupt for this process, that you would have the self-awareness and the strength and the open-mindedness to really allow your teams to follow the learning. You're not going to now constrain them, because that is actually unethical. So I do a pretty deep call and connection with a lot of the institutional leaders before I get going, because I truly believe it's unethical for me to begin work with an organization if I get signals that I know the leader will just backpedal, return to their power and comfort, and they will then harm my team members. Because I've seen that happen in the early days, and that's when I started to make these decisions about who I will and will not work with. And for me, it's honestly the ethical nature of hurting people, these staff that are so enthusiastic, they're so inspired, they've learned so much, they're so excited to apply the framework to everything, and then to just get squished is heartbreaking.
Yeah. And do you have an example you can share of when the framework has been used to create a really awesome, cool outcome?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's quite a few. So we were working with a workforce development organization, and they were a pass-through organization with federal funding that they then regranted to numerous, I think 40 different nonprofit agencies in their county. And their paperwork, where the organizations had to submit monthly information, once they submitted the reports, that would unlock further funding. But the paperwork and the application, but like the reporting process was so clunky, so frustrating. They knew it was bad for more than a decade. They knew it was not good, but they had used their power to not do anything about it. So finally they came in through the framework and said, okay, we're going to address it. We're going to co-design a new process with these different agencies. So they started doing interviews, started understanding what those pain points were, what was working, what wasn't, and they redesigned the process. And across those different agencies, they counted up the before and after of the time that it took, and they saved 800 hours a month from those
Wow.
organizations that they then
My
could put back
gosh.
into their mission. And then they were able to simplify, because what they learned, which was so interesting, it was like such a human connection, was that when they were doing the interviews, they found this one woman, and she was the woman responsible in the nonprofit agency for collecting the data, submitting it. And this person said, I have missed weddings, funerals, vacations, because I'm the only one here that knows how to do this. And if I don't get it done, payroll is impacted,
Mhm.
right? Like, this is so important. And they realized that their comfort, they're just sitting on a process they knew was broken. They instantly saw, like, we're impacting this one person.
Mm.
We're preventing them from having the freedom and flexibility to make different choices and do different things. So that became like, we're doing it for this person. They were like, we're sending her on vacation. Let's go. And so it was beautiful to see the humanity and the connection that they understood. And when they brought it to me, I thought, well, this is not very sexy, like improving a monthly reporting process, but it was transformative. And then the team was just like, what else can we do? What else what else can we do to make everybody happier and make this more efficient and effective? And so they started looking at their annual partnership renewal process to really make that more efficient and effective. So it's yes, it's the nuts and bolts of time and money and how people feel, but it's the spirit. I think the spirit of what the work does just ignites this hunger for change, this awareness of opportunities to really improve everyone's daily experience of doing the work, and how transformative that can be if we make these small shifts, can create these massive ripples. So I love that as one of the examples. Yeah.
And I think that's what's so powerful in your work, Heather, that when you change how you make change, it changes everything, right? It changes not only your outcomes, but it changes the people doing the work. It changes the experience of doing the work, and it changes your excitement for problems versus them feeling so heavy. And what I hear in your story is that you took a group of people who saw a challenge as a failure and they learned to see a challenge as an opportunity. And what an incredible thing. If you can do that for everything that isn't working in social change, then not only does it create bigger, better outcomes, but it makes the experience of doing the work so much more enjoyable.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. And that's what I also encourage my team members, my change makers that go through the process, is I have them do reflective work to say, how are you feeling? How are you being transformed? Because I'm asking them to question how they do fundamental tasks in their work. I'm asking them to interrupt what they believe to be true. I'm asking them to make space for other people to live in their hearts and minds and to motivate them to really embrace that change. So it's not always comfortable, but I want them to develop that self-awareness, empathetic muscle, and that self-empathetic muscle where they go, okay, I'm feeling some tension, sort of, some somatic work of connectedness. Why am I feeling angry about this thinking? Why am I feeling challenged? Why am I feeling threatened? Why am I feeling excited? Okay, I'm going to sit with that. And that's important because I don't want them to show up to their teamwork carrying that luggage and like throwing it on the table and not doing the work.
Right.
And I think it starts with all of us, right? So it's a core value that's embedded. It may not be as like right on top of the PAUSE, but it's a core value that's like a thread that binds the framework is around this self-awareness and transformation.
I love that. Because I think that one of the unspoken assumptions of the sector is that the work is hard and grueling, and that if you choose this life and career, there will always be a level of suffering in it. And what I love about your approach is that you're inviting that assumption to be really turned on its head by people not only changing how they do the work, but changing themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's interesting about suffering. Ooh, that's a whole other thing. That's a good topic for Possibility Project. Like, what is this assumption of suffering? Yeah, now more than ever, I think it's imperative. And I love that it's togetherness, that teamwork. My teams are only 3 to 5 groups. That's all that's allowed in the team because that is what's efficient. That's what's connected and effective. And I love that there's togetherness. People see each other's, they learn each other's positionality, they learn each other's superpowers. They learn that every single person in their agency is valuable. Every human is valuable. Every community member is valuable. And everyone is bringing these assets and abundance and abilities that are usually not recognized and not included and not invited and not inspired. So what does that do to the work when we see every single person as valuable and full of gifts that are just untapped or, unspoken or unappreciated? That will just, wow, you just set it on fire. There's amazing opportunities there just waiting.
Absolutely. Which dovetails us really nicely into what I want to ask you about the sector. So, to start off with, if every organization adopted just one change tomorrow that was inspired by your work, what should that be?
Oh, it should really be identifying what they don't know. If they were to say, okay, if the leader would be vulnerable and open enough to say, I don't know the best way to support this need in the community. I don't know how or if this new process of how I want people to work is going to affect the staff. They were just to say that instead of saying, well, I think this is what it is. And because I hold the most positional power in this hierarchical structure, I choose this. And I'm now going to tell everyone their role and expectations and timeline and metrics, and then I'm going to hold them accountable, which is unethical, honestly. If you have a topic that's highly uncertain, how can you hold people accountable to an outcome without ever talking to anyone impacted by that challenge, without doing that deep learning? If you just jump into solution and implementation and execution, it's just kind of ridiculous to think that you would get it right on the first try. So I think that is fundamental for people to have that vulnerability to say, we don't know. And who else is there that can be with us, right? There's fierce competition in the sector that we rarely speak of, which is ridiculous because it's so prevalent and such a strong motivator and impact of all of our activities. But what else is out there? Who's doing different things? I don't know what they're doing. They don't know what I'm doing. How do we just identify all these areas of potential learning and uncertainty that can help elevate our work and drive our solution forward? But how the sector is currently set up, we're supposed to pretend that everything's great. Everything has to be like what's on the website, right?
Yeah.
We do amazing work all the time. We have the best culture. We're the best leaders. We are the agency to donate to because we've got it figured out. And that's how we're expected to write our grant applications. That's how we have these conversations with donors. We're not allowed to say we don't know. Because if we do that, it could impact those, the funding, it can impact the community support, etc. But it's ridiculous to think that we all have it figured out. And what's really sad, it's really, really sad, is that our organizations are working in silos and in competition. So can you imagine what would be possible if the 12 agencies all working around the same mission were sharing, well, we tried this and it didn't work.
Right.
Well, we tried this and we were off course, or this was excellent. All of that knowledge is being contained and strangled by those individual organizations because they don't want anyone else to know what they're up to. But that's ridiculous if who is punished and who will experience the most pain are community members or staff within the agency that aren't receiving the love and care and support and resources that they actually need because of our weird participation in this game. Mm-hmm. So it ties back to my earlier issues around power. Right? It's like who wins and who loses with some of our existing structures. And it takes people really stepping out of their comfort to say, we don't know and we need help. We cannot do this alone.
Flipping to the other side of the coin, I'm going to borrow a question that you asked your guest on the Possibility Project. And I was honored to be a guest myself a little while ago. And that is, what gives you hope in the social change sector?
The individuals that exist within it. Gosh, I mean, all the guests, including yourself, amazing work that you all are doing is so inspiring. That all the good troublemaking, right, that all of us are up to, I know that I'm not alone. And this was a recent topic. It was the last topic on Possibility Project a couple of weeks ago. It was called the ancestry and lineage of change making. What gives me hope is that, and Tamika Vasquez from the Future Quo said this in a post that she had on LinkedIn. I loved it. Was we are but a blip in the of time, whatever time is, right? And we know it's nonlinear, but in the imagination of a timeline of our existence, we are but a blip. We can own our blip, but and some of the guests were talking about Dr. Gabriela Alcalde, who just published her book, What Your Comfort Cost Us. So check that out. Was talking about that there's a sense of, comfort in our own insignificance as well as our own power, right? So it's like we're can own our blip. We can show up and fight. We can show up and question. We can show up to love and support, never knowing, what the end result will be, the ripples that we're creating, but that's the intention that can guide us on a daily basis. But also there's this sort of pleasure in knowing that there have been people that we will never know about, that are never published or, talked about in history books, that made amazing change, small, medium, large, whatever you're thinking. They're here now and they will be into the future. And those are the people that we don't know who we're influencing or that will come after us. They, just like we were saying, they will be born with this pull. They'll be born with a desire to make the world a better place. And that makes me happy to know, and it makes me hopeful that I'm just this little speck of a speck of a speck of a speck in the universe. But how cool is that?
It really, really is cool and it's super inspiring. I'm glad you landed us there. Heather, thank you so very much for your insights, for sharing them with us today, for your time, for your energy, but really just how you show up in this world, bringing this passion and such incredible compassion for the change makers you work with, coupled with this challenge of we can do better. Let's do better. And I think that that combination is really unique and powerful. And I'm just so grateful for it. Before we say goodbye, tell us how our listeners can best connect with you and how they can employ your services.
Thank you. Thank you for all your kind words and for having me here today with you. People can go to pause, PAUSE, for change, FOR, change.com. And that talks about all the work and really what drives the work. They can find out about the book there, but the book is called No More Status Quo, a proven framework to change the way we change the world. So you can find that on any online retailer to check it out and to learn more. And then Possibility Project, that online conversation series. We hold conversations every month with amazing leaders from all over. I think we're on episode number 57, about 140 different guests. We're talking next week about, we're hosting the triumvirate, I'm calling them, of troublemaking, crappy funding practices, community-centric fundraising, and more than grant writers. We'll all have representatives there talking about all the ways that we can disrupt. So that's possibilityproject.org. So check out any of those and come play.
Wonderful. Heather, thank you so incredibly much. I am just very, very grateful to you and for this conversation.
Thank you. I love all that you're doing, and you're with me. You make me feel less alone. I know that there's other troublemakers in the world doing the work, feeling the pull, and showing up for it every day. So thank you.
There you have it, a wonderful conversation with an incredible change maker who provided so many tips and tools and tricks to be able to change how you change the world. Do not forget to pick up her book, No More Status Quo. Check out her website, Pause for Change, and also the Possibility Project, her conversation series. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you have, I would 1,000,000,000% appreciate you rating and reviewing it wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us grow and reach new people. And until next time, when I cannot wait to share another story of change with you, I hope you have a great one.